Alright, today we'll cover eyes. So your eyes are part of the central nervous system and, quite interestingly, contain just about 70% of all of your sensory receptor cells in your whole body. That's quite a bit. And they are the things that actually allow you to see. So, the structure of the eye. Basically, how it works is you have a light ray that travels first through the cornea, right? Through the cornea, which is basically just simply a bulge in the sclera, right? Okay? And inside of it is actually just fluid. And as you may ask, what it actually does is it simply just refracts the light, right? So it doesn't actually bend it. All it does is it just changes its direction. Let's draw it a little bit more like that. Right? Okay. After which it will pass through into the pupil. And basically, the pupil itself isn't actually a structure. All it is a gap that allows the light just to go straight through in the iris itself. So the iris, that's the colorful part of your eye, right? Okay, which I'll talk more about towards the end. So it then travels through the lens, right? So that's this whole structure here. And basically what the lens does, it refracts it even more. And by refracting it, it changes its direction to hit more of the retina, right? Okay. I haven't drawn it very well, but just imagine that it's changed its direction more. And what the retina is, I'll get to it more in detail, is basically everything that's inside of the lining of the eyeball. Now, something that I should mention is something that you'll get that comes up in your exam is what the light actually does is, imagine you have a light ray that is shooting like this. It shoots in like that, after which it changes its I'll draw it a little bit better. So it shoots in, hits the cornea, changes its direction a little bit, goes through the pupil, then through the lens, after which it changes its direction a little bit again, right? Now imagine there's another light ray coming in through here. So, same process, hits the cornea, changes its direction a little bit, right? Goes through the lens, changes its direction a little bit again. So what you can see here is actually it's inverted, right? However, once it hits our brain just automatically puts it upright, essentially. So we can see everything upright. But that's basically the main point there. And then you have 6 muscle tendons that actually are holding onto the eye and keep it in the socket. And then you have a small, quite fairly small, protective layer of fat, which is this part here. I'm sorry. Which is this part here. And basically what that is, as the name suggests, it just simply protects the eye from when we shake our heads. The actual structure doesn't get damaged too much. So, now, I will get to the ciliary body and the vitreous humor in a bit, but first I want to talk a little bit more about the sclera, choroid, and retina. So those are the 3 main layers that make up your eye. So, to start off with the sclera is found at the very outside of your eye, and that's what actually makes up the white stuff that you can see in your eye, essentially. It's quite relatively hard, and its job is to give minimum protection, but primarily to give the eye some form, right? Then, just underneath that, you have the choroid layer, which it basically is made up of primarily muscle. However, its sole purpose is just to transport blood all over the eye, essentially. That's its main purpose. And underneath that, as we briefly discussed, is the retina. Now, the retina is the most interesting part. It contains all of those receptory cells, which actually convert the light into an impulse, which sends it through the optic nerve, right? This sort of receptor cells are called photoreceptory cells, right? Quite self-explanatory as it is. The optic nerve is basically, just imagine a cord that is linked up to the brain, and that basically transmits all of the impulses made from in the retina. Now, ciliary body and vitreous humor, right? Fluid. So let's start with ciliary body. The ciliary body allows structure and form for the lens and partially the iris. Now, how that works is basically it either constrains or goes into more of a rest, which changes its form, right? However, it has one other major part to it, and that is it produces the actual vitreous humor fluid. And as to what that is, it's basically this jellyish liquid that's has two primary purposes, which is basically one, that it refracts the light slightly, and the second part is it actually gives structure to the eye. So imagine a water balloon, right? So the rubber layer is the sclera, choroid, and retina, and everything that's on the outside of the eye. And imagine if it was deflated. That's what your eye would look like without this jelly. So this jelly basically gives it form, right? Once you fill up a water balloon, it actually looks like a water balloon. Big brain time, I know, right? And that's actually pretty much all of the eye structure. If you want notes on just what I covered just now, and it's basically just functions, then feel free to pause the video and take down some of these notes. However, I will be moving on. So, the retina. The retina basically converts the light from photoreceptor cells into impulses, as I discussed before, that is sent to the brain. Now, it has two different types of receptory cells that actually, convert all of this and send it to the brain. They're called rods and cones. Special name. Very special name. I know. Don't tell me about it, right? So you can basically imagine it as, so this is the retina muscle layer, so to speak, right? That actually absorbs the light, so it's taking all of that refracted light, right? And it is transferred into goblet cells, right? Which are these things, that pass on the impulse to the sensory neurons, and it will then either go to the cone or the rod. Now, let's start with the cones. Cones detect that sort of layer, the very vibrant, colorful lights and whatnot, and in order for them to actually operate, there needs to be quite a large / sufficient amount of light in order for the cones to register it. And there's actually quite few of them, especially in comparison to rods, right? So for every sensory cell, there is only one of these rods. You don't have to go into that much detail, but you basically just have to know that there are a lot more of them, It requires a lot of light to register, and it sees all of the colorful colors that you can see, right? Now, rods. Rods are basically the complete opposite. The rods allow us to see primarily shapes, right? So imagine, when you turn off the light and you have to run before that demon gets you and get into your bed where it's safe, right? Well, the way that you actually see that bed, you can't really see the colors of the bed, but you can see the general structure. And that's your rods basically working, right? And it also makes up our peripheral vision. So if you just have, paying more attention to your peripheral vision, you can't really see the color, but you can definitely see primarily the shape, right? It's really weird, I know. Now, where the cone is only singular on a sensory cell, the rods can go up to about 100 of them. Of course, I haven't drawn 100 here, but the point still follows. And that's pretty much all of it. Yeah, no, that's pretty much all. The only other thing that you have to kind of know is basically the iris. So man, you know that thing that you see on TV where the medic is checking out someone's eye and they shine a torch into it? Well, what they're looking for is the reflexes, right? If you shine a light into your buddy's eye, right, it will constrict, right? So it will get smaller, right? So the pupil will become smaller. That's because the iris is simply just going at rest, right? So the sphincter muscles that are in the iris, they don't contract. However, when there is not enough light, or there just isn't that dangerously amount of light in the surroundings, the sphincter muscle cells will constrict, causing the pupil to open up a lot more. And the point of this is basically to protect your eyes from too much light and allow more light to go in when there isn't enough. And that's light and eyes. Sorry, that's eyes for you. Hope you enjoyed.